Hello everybody and welcome to zlatanobojmtg. I'm here with Alex.
Hello.
And he is going to show us his Gruul monsters deck today. So first we have the creatures. Do you know how many what the creature count is off the top of your head?
We just let me just equate it for 8,
do
10.
do 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 do.
It's 26.
26 creatures.
Oh yeah.
So if you give us a quick run through of what we've got here, then you can talk about them.
Basically, the win con, the whole idea of the deck is Stormbreath Dragons, Pelucanos. Stormbreaths, especially in this meta at the moment, is it's got obviously it's got amazing evasion with its flying and protection from white. Its monstrosity ability is pretty relevant. It deals damage to an opponent equal to the number of cards in their hand, which is handy dandy. So the whole lower end of the curve is based on ramp. So we've got the staples, which is 4 Elvish Mystics, 4 Sylvan Caryatids.
Yep.
Sylvan Caryatids absolutely fantastic, specifically because they've got hexproof, which means they're not going to get the only way your opponent's going to get rid of them is some kind of board wipe.
Yeah, you know, an overloaded Mizzy Immortals is often a decent way of getting rid of them. But again, as you say, along with hexproof, you've got the add 1 mana of any colour to your pool, because as well as this being Gruul monsters, there's also a bit of splash of black, which you're going to talk about later.
Yep.
But Sylvan Caryatid helps that, so that's really cool. Also, obviously, with the next card, Burning Tree, you can Burning Tree into Caryatids.
The whole idea with the Burning Trees is you can, on turn 2, you can get a decent board presence basically for free. You can use 2 mana, put the Burning Tree down, use the 2 mana produced by the Burning Tree emissary to bring out something more useful, but you've still got a 2/2 blocker or something that you can pump with other spells that we'll look at in a minute.
Yeah.
Courser of Crucifix, which wants to be a 4 of.
Okay.
I only have 3 at the moment, but here they are regardless. And I'll talk a bit about what I would take out in favour of a 4th Courser. But if you don't know, Courser of Crucifix, you have to play with your top card revealed, which is, and if it's a land, you can play it, provided you haven't already played a land that turn, because you can still only play 1 land per turn. But one of the main things about the Courser that's so good is it allows you to dig further into your deck. So if you start your turn and you pick up the card, you pick up a land off the top, and then you turn over and reveal another land, you can then play that one, and then you've essentially dug like 2 cards into your deck, so which can help you sort of get through stuff that you do and don't need.
Okay, so you'd obviously have an extra one of those, which is, you know, it's obvious. I mean, it's a good body as well. A 2/4 for 3 is pretty relevant actually, especially when the idea is to get to late game for your deck.
It's going to need something pretty horrendous to kill it.
Yeah, you know, you've got blockers here. You've got chump blockers, you know, with your 0/3 defenders, your 2/2s, and now your 2/4s. There's chump blockers lower down the scale, and then you get on to a bit higher up. You take the leap from 3 to 4, and you have Gore Clan Rampager.
Yeah, technically, I mean, if you're playing this card, if you're hard casting it for 4 mana to get a 4/4 trample, something's probably gone wrong.
Yes, of course,
the reason that you want to use this card is for the low cost of green-red, which it's no coincidence that's exactly what you get from Burning Tree Emissary.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
You can pump any creature 4/4 and give it trample.
It's the trample bit I find amazing. I genuinely think it's ridiculous Wizards printed the trample ability on the Blood Rush.
4/4 for 2 is amazing.
It's still good anyway. It's still good.
4/4 and trample for 2 is just too good to pass up if you're in these colours and playing a creature.
I genuinely think it's good enough to be a rare. I really do. Genuinely.
It's fantastic.
It's a good card. Would you add another one of those, or are you happy with the 3?
I think 3's enough. I don't think, because it's very circumstantial.
Yeah.
If you've got nothing better to do with that, if it's going to win you the game to pump, or it's a decent combat trick, but I don't think it's worth gumming up your hand with like possibly having 4 of them. I think 3 just lets it come out enough times for it to be useful. And then we get on to a bit more win con-y.
A bit more of a beastie creature.
A 5/5 for 4.
I mean, that's great anyway. Pelucanos,
yeah,
it's just ridiculous.
That's above the curve. Anyway.
Yeah, anything above the curve is good, always good in Magic, but then you tack on the extra abilities this guy has, and it becomes Even more so. It's pretty ridiculous.
So Monstrosity X, you could, with all the ways that this deck has to produce mana, it's not going to be a problem for you to, by the time Pelucanos comes out, maybe the next turn, the turn after, you're going to be able to get X3. That's pretty standard.
Yeah.
And then with that, I mean, if you're playing against a Weenies deck, that's essentially you've just killed 3 creatures and probably opened up a path for Pelucanos to swing for the face.
Yeah.
If you can somehow combine this with a Death Touch effect by using, say, Bow of Nylea, which I don't have in this deck, but just saying.
Yeah.
If you have a Bow of Nylea, which gives all your creatures Death Touch, then you can apply 1 damage from Pelucanos to, and it will kill anything.
Yeah.
Basically.
I have seen a few deck lists actually running Bow of Nylea with this. I see you've got 4 of them. Being legendary, do you never see that as a problem?
No, because it's a huge target, and there's so much cheap removal in Standard at the moment. It's quite often I'll put a Pelucanos down and it will die to Doomblade.
Yes,
instantly. So having 4, it seems. I mean, you wouldn't usually have 4 legendary anything in a deck.
No,
it's wasteful. You're just going to be gumming up your hand.
Yeah, it is a way to draw removal for sure.
The thing is that the one and only weakness of Pelucanos, and it does need one, is that it dies to all hard removal as far as I can think.
Yes.
So having 4 is good. It's going to be a huge target. The first time you put one down, don't be surprised if it just gets eradicated.
Yeah. Moving on, we come on to Xenagos, God of Revels. We also got the Planeswalker Xenagos, which we'll come on to later. This guy is actually my commander in my Gruul commander deck. He's absolutely ridiculous in that, and I'm pretty sure ridiculous in your deck as well. And we were actually talking about something quite interesting, which I'm sure you'll get onto, is the amount of double mana costs in this deck, which means that his devotion just comes online, as you said earlier, so quick.
I've had people sort of question Xenagos' inclusion, but it's okay. So it can double the power of a creature at the start of every combat. That if you double that up with Stormbreath Dragon when it's monstrous, that can be a win con all in and on of itself.
Oh god, yeah. So like 14. Yeah, 7, 4, 14. Yeah, so that's crazy.
You can be swinging in the air for 14 if it's monstrous, whatever. It's never a bad thing to double. In a creature deck, double your creature's power is crazy. It's indestructible, obviously, all the gods are. But the thing that makes it really, it's almost too good to not include, is that all of the key creatures in this deck, which are Courser of Kruphix, Stormbreath Dragon, Pelucanos, also both of the Planeswalkers that I have in it, also Burning Tree Emissary, all have double mana costs in their double mana symbols in their costs. So that basically means that if by the time you get Xenagos out, you've got a Courser, a Pelucanos, and a Caryatid. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus the 2 from Xenagos, and he's online as soon as he comes out.
Yeah,
and that does happen a lot. It's quite relevant.
And having a 6/5 indestructible for 5 is no joke.
No joke at all. That you can double if you've got nothing else to double. It's just good.
A question quickly, actually. I've always wondered this. Before we move on to Stormbreath Dragon, with Burning Tree Emissary with Devotion, does he count as 2 red and 2 green?
Just 2.
Is it just 2 of...
2, one or the other.
See, this is something I was always wondering. Good
question, though. I think that slips a lot of people up.
Yeah, I don't really play much Devotion, so it's not really something I have to work around.
Because it's just contained in the circle there, it still counts as 1.
Okay.
And then last but not least, probably the main win con in the deck, Stormbreath Dragon. This will be getting groans and moans out of anyone that you put it down against.
Yes.
It's a 4/4 for 5, which is below the curve, but flying and haste, that is crazy.
And then you tack on protection from white, and there's so much good white, not removal as such, sort of answers to things. You've got your new Oblivion
white
Ring
is the
thing.
colour of answers, isn't it? So this Stormbreath Dragon, and white's widely used.
Yeah.
At the moment, where I'm playing it is anyway. Yeah. Nobody is happy when you put a Stormbreath Dragon down.
And obviously a lot of flies are white as well. And the things that are going to be able to block this then suddenly can't block it, and it just becomes pretty much an unblockable creature if you're playing, a blue-white deck.
All your opponent can do if they're playing in white, I mean, much the same if you've got Miscut Hydras when you're playing against blue.
Yeah.
All they can hope to do is throw creatures at it and let them die.
Yeah.
Obviously, it dies to hard removal, especially in black.
Yeah.
But usually you're gonna swing for 4
Yeah.
once you get Stormbreath Dragon out, and being able to go in and swing for 4, that's like a quarter of your opponent's health. And nobody. Your opponent is probably going to be like pretty much tapped out by the time you get it out. It's just a good card. There's a reason that it's mythic rare.
Yeah, I mean, even if they do have a blocker for it, not in white, Blood Rush, just giving trample.
Exactly.
I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And then you're swinging for an 8/8 without monstrosity, with trample, haste, and protection from white and flying. It's just ridiculous.
It's also worth mentioning that its monstrosity ability can be a surprise game finisher. That if people forget about it, it deals damage to opponent equal to the number of cards in their hand.
Oh yeah. Actually, I forgot about that as well, despite being right in front of me.
So
there you go.
That can be quite relevant if your opponent's sort of like pegging on life and they've drawn cards or something. If they've forgotten about it, if you've got the ramp, which you should,
yes,
you can pick them off like that, and it's a nice, fun little win con.
Cool. So there are the creatures in the deck. We're going to move on to spells and planeswalkers. So we'll be right back in a second with those cards. Okay, so we've done the creatures. We're now moving on to spells and planeswalkers. Not many spells, all of which sorcery speed, which I'm sure we'll be explaining because it does make sense. So I guess do you want to start at Mizium Mortars and move through?
Yeah, sure thing. So Mizium Mortars, it's not a especially fancy card. It's just very good soft removal.
Yeah.
It's 4 damage for 2. That's relevant. There's not many times you can get that kind of damage flying.
No.
And the overload, it seems cost prohibitive, but it's really not. And late on in the game, which is the kind of time where you're going to want to use it, it can be a board wipe for your opponent. Well, a wipe on their side of the board. It's and open up your attacking passage. It's just as good as red soft removal gets. Really.
Yeah, I mean, even though it's sorcery speed, 4 damage for 2 is great. And the fact that it has overload, as you say, for that late game, it has that extra dimension. It's a good early spell if you want to clear through early damage. It's a good spell late game if you want to clear through for a win. It's just all around a great card. I play in my standard deck. I play them, as you know. Mm-hmm. You play them. It's one of the best red spells out there. It will be until it rotates. There's no way it's not going to be in any red deck. It's just good. I
suppose at this point, especially coming on to Dreadbore, it's worth mentioning why it's not specifically a problem that they're all at sorcery speed in this deck.
Yeah. And
this was pointed out to me by a friend of mine from my local FNM. The whole reason for splashing black in this deck is for Dreadbore. And somebody mentioned, well, if you're going to use Dreadbore, why not just use Hero's Downfall? It's the same spell, but it's instant speed. But in this deck, when you're playing, if you ever play it, you'll find you're going to be tapped out every turn. There's something for you to be doing with your mana pretty much no matter what every turn. You're not going to have mana open to have the luxury to cast instants, which isn't really a problem. It just means that we can basically cast Hero's Downfall for 2 instead of 3.
Yeah. The
only setback is that you can't kill a Planeswalker before it has chance to activate one of its abilities.
Yes.
It's a slight concession, though. It's not...
Not a lot of Planeswalkers +1 abilities are, I'm not going to say not relevant, but they're not game-breaking. Unless it's Jace the Mind Sculptor, it's not game-breaking.
But Dreadbore is a fantastic sorcery, and I'll be using it until it rotates out.
Yeah, I'm the same. Again, in my deck, which I'm sure we'll do a deck tech on at some point, this thing it's in there for the same reason. It's just fantastic removal.
And of course with Caryatids, for 1 black, it's easy to splash 1 of any colour if you've got 4 Caryatids in your deck.
Yeah.
There's not going to be very many times when the off colour is going to be prohibitive.
Yeah.
So moving on to Flesh and Blood, this is contentious. Obviously the flesh side of it is completely worthless to us.
Yeah.
But Blood is surprisingly amazing.
Oh yeah.
To say the least.
It's sort of pseudo double strike in a way.
Yeah.
Which is weird. I mean, if you attack with a Stormbreath Dragon that's on monstrosity, which would be what, a 7?
7, yeah.
And then second main phase play a Blood.
Yeah.
It's basically like you've double striked without having to have double strike on a card. I think it's great. I genuinely do.
Well,
I think it's fantastic.
I've got a circumstance from the other day. I was playing against a friend of mine, and this was before I had the Gorklen Rampagers, so I was using Rubber Pelt Macars instead. And on turn maybe 4, I double pumped a Burning Tree Emissary up to 8 for 2 red mana with Rubber Pelt Macars. Swung for 8 to the face, and then cast Blood, and essentially in one turn swung for 16 in the early sort of 2 mid game.
That's great.
Blood, you could have it as a one-off because it's not something that you're not relying on it. It's just nice to have. The damage goes straight over the top.
Also, actually looking at it as well, obviously it's target creature as well, so it is like a one-sided fight as well.
Absolutely.
Which I think is kind of cool. But you said Flesh is useless. Looking at it actually now, I mean, if you do have the mana open, Flesh is not that bad. I mean, it's not going to be something that's going to be used every game. It's not going to be something that's necessarily useful. But,
it's not the archetype of the deck.
Yeah, it's not the archetype of the deck, and it shouldn't be. But I mean, if the mana shows up for it,
it's there.
It's there, and if you get to the point where you have your 7 mana and you have a Caryatid to play your black, exiling a creature from your graveyard, for example, if you exiled a Gorklan Rampager after you blood rushed it, that's 4 counters on something, and also you're using blood. It could be worth it, but it's just there as an extra thing. I see it as that way. Obviously, it's not. It's there for the blood, but Flesh can be used in some very niche circumstances.
Your opponent could think they're sitting pretty, and you can easily surprise them with this card.
Yeah, and no one's going to expect this. No one is going to expect blood to be in a deck.
It's a 50-cent card.
Yeah.
No one's going to expect you to win on turn 5 with essentially a double strike.
But a lot of the times, those 50-cent cards are actually when people surprising. When used to surprise someone, are amazing. I mean, we were talking a minute ago about Dictate of the Twin Gods. There's a great clip of 2 professional Magic players. I can't remember their names, so I apologise for that. And one of them flashes in a Dictate of the Twin Gods and just completely annihilates him. And he's like, "What? You mainboarded Dictate of the Twin Gods?" And like, yeah, no one expects him to do it. Not the commentary team, nobody. And this is very similar.
We'll link to it here.
Yeah, link there. Look at that. That's professional. We've only been doing this YouTube thing a couple of days.
Okay, moving on.
Yes, let's move on to Domi Raid.
So the Planeswalkers, super duper important in this deck, and you'll notice, anyone who's savvy at all with this kind of deck, I only have 2. Now the reason for this is because they cost an arm and a leg.
They are incredibly expensive. One of these was mine. I traded this away.
And another one I bought for hard cash off a friend of mine.
And I bet that hurt.
It's never fun.
No.
So, in the ideal world, you'll want 4 Domi Raids, and I guess to make that available, you'd lose a Elvish Mystic probably, and a Flesh Blood maybe to make Flesh Blood a 1-of, and Elvish Mystic a 3-of. It's worth it to get Domi Raid in because he is made for this deck. His +1 ability. Look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. So this is just letting you dig every turn for it's kind of like an extra draw every turn.
Yeah.
His -2, target creature you control fights another target creature.
I love fight. I've said that I was actually watching a couple of my old videos like an absolute egomaniac last night. And I'm so ashamed to admit this, but this is the only way I can actually link to this. And I was saying in one of the videos, I think it was one of my set reviews for M14, that fight was one of my favourite keywords ever in Magic. I think it's absolutely superb. So flavourful. And to have it on Domi Raid as his -2 as a removal is just, I think it's amazing.
With the size and with the bodies of the creatures in this deck, it essentially acts as hard removal.
Yeah.
In a way. I mean, even a Courser of Crufix with its 4 toughness.
Yeah.
That's not going to lose many fights.
No, it's not.
And his ultimate.
Oh God.
Which ultimates on Planeswalkers, they don't get off a lot. Domi Raid is so relevant. I've seen it happen.
God.
And let's just. I'll let Noah just do the name check on what it actually does.
Oh, where do we start? I mean, we've got double strike, trample, hexproof, haste, and emblems can't be removed. Emblems are impossible to get rid of. Once they're out, they're there. I was sat next to honestly, I'll tell you, this is a true story. At the Gatecrash pre-release, I was sat next to 2 girls playing Magic, and I don't think they've been playing on. I think they were there with their boyfriends, and one of them had a Domi Raid, and the other one didn't know what to do with it, didn't know how to get rid of it, didn't know you could get rid of it, and so the other person ultimated it. And oh my god, the carnage was just instant. The whole team were just instant annihilation. It's horrible. I've ultimated it once in EDH, which is where my dominant raid was before I traded it away to you. And I've ultimated it once, and everybody just rage quit. Because there's no way of... I had a Gruul deck, and there's just no way of beating it. It's incredible. If you get it off, it's incredible.
What Domi Raids -7 really says is if you have creatures on the field, you win.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, making them hex-proof.
I mean, that's just the cherry, isn't it?
I mean, unless they've got a mass board wipe, Mizzy Mortars being there, but that doesn't touch every one of your creatures. It doesn't.
No.
I mean, it doesn't touch a Xenagos if it's online.
Absolutely
it doesn't.
not.
And Domin Raid, oh god, I can't deal with it. Honestly, if the ultimate ability comes off, guys, you have won. If you don't win when you've got the ultimate and you've got the emblem, you are doing something wrong. You should not be playing. Go and play Hearthstone.
A clear.
Stop playing Magic.
A clear 4 of.
Yes.
And then, last but not least, absolutely not least, Xenagos the Reveler. Now, he's at the top of the curve in this deck. No, he's not. He's only 4 mana, the top's 5. But you'll be seeing him maybe every. He's only a 2 of. You'll see him maybe every. I don't know, 1 in 3 games.
Yeah.
He gets onto the field. His +1 is sort of circumstantial if you've got a lot out, which I'll also talk about in a bit. Why it's not necessarily always a good idea to have all your creatures out. But his +1 is add X mana in any combination of green and red, equal to the number of creatures you control. Now this is good for pumping into things like Monstrosity, where Pelucanos's and Stormbreath Dragon's monstrosities are quite high on sort of ability mana cost. So you can use Xenagos' +1 and lose nothing to help lessen the sting of that, which is usually what I use it for. But when Xenagos comes out for me, more often than not, I will just continuously use his 0 ability, which is to put a 2/2 red and green Satyr with haste onto the field.
Yeah.
Which is never a bad thing. And it's essentially what you're going to use Xenagos for, is to just flood the field. And obviously his 0 helps out his 1 ability, his +1 ability quite a lot.
Yeah, I think it's great that that he has a 0 ability. And there's not many Planeswalkers that do. And if they do, they're most of the time a bit underwhelming, again, unless you're Jason Mind Sculptor and unless you're Xenagos in this situation.
Yeah.
To get a creature for a 0 thing, you usually have to be +1ing or -1ing to get creatures. This is a 0 cost. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic.
And his -6, which isn't hard to get to. It's only 3 lots of. It's only 3 turns after you put him down. Or, well, 3 turns including the turn you put him down.
Yes.
Exile the top 7 cards of your library. You may put any number of creature and/or land cards from among them onto the battlefield. So, I shouldn't have to really explain how good that is.
No.
I mean, that's free creatures.
Free creatures, free ramp.
Free ramp. So that's not necessarily why you're going to play Xenagos, but if you get into the situation where maybe you've got him up to 7 loyalty, then do it.
Yeah, do it.
I mean, that's essentially, and it's not as certain as Domi Raid's ultimate to be winning you the game, but
it's more than likely.
There's a fairly good chance that, I mean, you could get like 2 Stormbreath Dragons out from it. You could get, I mean, just anything from it is good.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, just quickly before we move on from the Planeswalker Xenagos, have you read the story about Xenagos? His origins, his childhood.
Not his childhood.
He
no.
At the end, this is spoilers, guys. I'm not going to tell you the whole story because I probably could have read it like 5 times. It was that good. He was a maniac basically, but he stabbed the sigiled starfish. You know the scryfish? He stabbed it with a stick and shouted something at it. I can't remember what he shouted, but he stabbed it with a stick on a beach, honestly.
Are you making this up?
No, I'll put the link here. No, I don't know. I'll find it. But
just before we move on as well, it took me about a month to realise that he wasn't flashing the horns. He's doing this.
Oh, I always thought he was. I'm disappointed. No!
Moving on.
Screw you, Xenagos. Okay, and finally we come on to the land. You are running 23 land, including how many forests, how many mountain?
There's 9 forests and only 2 mountains.
I guess it doesn't need too much discussion as such.
No.
You play more green sources than you are red.
Yes.
That's basically it. Do you want to start at which end? Which end would you rather start at? The Stomping Ground end or the Mana Confluence? Let's start with Stomping Ground. And the one Gruul Guild.
One upsetting Gruul Guild gate.
Yeah.
I mean, this should all be pretty self-explanatory. Stomping Grounds, Shockland, green, red. great. Pull it out if you need to straight away and use it to get a dual land, but take 2 damage, which isn't really going to affect this deck much.
No, and you've got 3 of those, so there's 3 up here, just in case you can't see the name. And then you've got the 1 Gruul Guildgate, which obviously, if you had another Stomping Ground, would be replaced.
Yeah, exactly.
In an ideal world.
Functionally, it's kind of the same, because it's not often that you bring out Stomping Ground and shock yourself.
No.
Unless sort of like it's prudent to do so.
Yeah, unless you have to get something out,
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Scrylands, Temple of Abandon.
Scrylands are great. I think everyone sort of ignored Scrylands for a lot of for very early on in the spoiler season. Everyone was saying, "Why are these rare lands? We want our dual lands. We just want plain dual lands, or we want more pain lands." And I think Temple of Abandon is great. I mean, all the temples are fantastic. Scrying is actually really relevant. A free scry is fantastic. Comes in tap like a gate, but you do get that scry. So I think it's worth a rare.
In an odd way, it's kind of like an extra type of mana fixing in and of itself, because if you put it down turn 1, if it's the first land that you play, and you need less or more land in the upcoming turns, it can help you dig for it.
Yeah.
If you scry the first card and it's a land that you want, then there you go. You can start to plan around that. So.
Yeah. I mean, as well, it's probably the same in your deck. In my standard deck, when you play something that scries, it's so useful to be able to see, is this on curve, especially with your deck. Absolutely. Where you have to be hitting curve, and the same with mine, where I top out at 4, but I want to be hitting 1, 2, 3, blam, and straight in. If I'm not getting what I want turn 2, for example, if I don't have in my deck what I want, obviously always second turn. We'll come to that when we do my deck building, but if I don't see that, I go straight to the bottom and hope that it comes up next turn. And this will, if you don't get what you want on curve, you can go and search for it.
It also saves you from the pain of starting with 2 Gore Clan Rampages and then pulling the second one on draw 1.
Yes.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. So let's move on to Nykthos. Let's start at the top with Nykthos.
Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. It's a legendary. It's not entirely relevant, but if you draw it towards the end of the game and you've got all of the devotion that you're going to get with this deck, then it essentially works in almost the same way that Xenagos does, where you can use it
monstrosity
to start pumping monstrosities, which are the most mana prohibitive thing in the whole deck.
Yeah.
So
it's fairly self-explanatory. Yeah, that one. I mean, the devotion thing, as you say, just a one-off doesn't really matter. But if it's there and you have it late game, it's great.
It's not a bad thing to have a one-off.
No.
I wouldn't say I'd push to 2, but I don't think it's relevant enough. Really, it's just a nice thing to have rather than maybe say like another mountain.
Yes.
It's just a bit more quirky and a bit more useful than that. So moving along to Mana Confluence, it's basically there solely for the mana fixing. There's been a few games where I've played this out early so I can get the colours that I want, and then later on in the game just sort of not used it at all because I don't want to.
Yeah, just in case you don't want to get pinged for one.
Yeah, I don't really want to be doing 1 damage to myself, but it can help you early game to morph exactly what you need out of it, which is essentially what it's made for, surely.
Yeah. So, and then you got here at the bottom the 2 best lands in the deck by far. It's Rakdos.
The Rakdos lands.
Yes.
Pretty self-explanatory. 1 Scry land in red-black, 1 Shock land in red-black. They're just for... it's a red source, and the black is good for if you need Dreadball. Which you do have to... It's in there, so I have to play around it a bit. Between the Caryatids, the Mana Confluence, and these 2 cards here, there's basically no game where that's not going to be a castable sorcery for.
Yeah, you've got, what would it be, 7 black sources, basically?
Essentially, yeah.
Caryatid, Mana Confluence, Blood Crypt, Templar Match. You've got 7 black sources, like having 7 black land extra in your deck. And that's why these dual lands, these mana-fixing creatures, and Mana Confluence are so good. And they're just worth every penny you either pay for them or every penny they're worth, because they just, when I started playing, and I don't know if it's the same for you, when I saw shock lands, I was like, what, I have to take 2 damage to be able to play either land? Why don't I just have a land? And then I was like, the more I saw it, I was like, oh, actually, yeah.
Dual lands
it's really
crazy good.
Dual lands are crazy good.
So... If I start the game and I've got either the Blood Crypt or the Temple of Malice in my opening hand, I'm not going to cry about it because it's a red mana source at the end of the day, and that's totally relevant. I can use it.
Yeah. Plus, obviously, you have the Temple you get to scry, which is again good. Which
is 5 temples instead of 4. So
yeah.
There it is.
So there we go. There's the land, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Make sure to comment, subscribe if you've not already, and give it a thumbs up as well because it really helps us out. I'd like to thank Alex for showing us this deck. It's a real good build. I haven't actually played against this version. I played against one a couple of weeks ago, which was like a pre-version of this, so I'm sure we'll have some games at some point. But thank you very much, Alex. Really nice deck.
Hey, man.
And
thanks to you.
Hey, thanks. It's been great. And we'll see you soon for more videos. So make sure to keep watching. And again, comment, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and let us know what you think. We'll see you soon, guys.
Bye.
Oh, Jesus.